Soul Night Live number 34. Tonight, my guest is Bryan Beller. Well, hey, thank you for dropping by. Really appreciate it. Having a chance to chat with you and catch up on what you've been doing lately. Um, you're out in California. I was wondering if the fires are affecting you at all.
Uh, well, the air where I live has been not so great for, uh, God, it seemed like it was about the last 2 weeks, but it just cleared up here where I am in northern, kind of rural Los Angeles County today. But, the bobcat fire in the Angeles National Forest is affecting a lot of the air around the entire LA basin, especially the foothills of Pasadena, Altadena, uh, La Cañada, that area, but now it just went north all the way into the Inland Valley. So, it's crazy. It's a crazy fire season, but that's a part of living in California.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of a natural thing every year somewhat. This year it's just like crazy out of control. Am I right?
We broke some heat records this year. I wonder why that might be happening.
I don't know,
it just beats me.
man.
So it's been an unusually hot year, and there's been an unusual number of fires. But thankfully, where I am is okay right now.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, fingers crossed it stays that way. I know a lot of my friends in California have been having some major issues, but nobody's, lost their home or anything. So fingers crossed everything's cool. So how have you been spending your days lately? You been out recording or what you been up to?
I've actually been working on a video. You know, I have to be honest with you. It's a little difficult to find uh, inspiration to create a bunch of content. I know some people what's been going on here is it's really inspired them to create a whole lot of work. And other people, it's really kind of caused them to just kind of be quiet and just gather and reflect. We have to, as artists, we can't just, most of us can't just constantly produce. We need to gather information and receive stimuli around us in order to kind of reflect it back through artistry. I know that sounds so pretentious, but I think it's really true. So
Yeah.
I just put out this massive double concept album called Scenes from the Flood last year. And it took me 4 years to get it together, really. And was on tour with the Aristocrats for like almost 9 months in a row, short breaks. And then this whole thing happened. So this period has been more of a time for me to kind of gather, reflect, and just kind of think about what the next real output would be for me. So instead of going into the world of new music, I decided to wanted to say something about the video-centric world in which we live in right now, and the cool we're doing, right? So I took 2 songs from Scenes from the Flood. One of them is called A Quickening, and one of them is called Steiner and Ellipses. They're both short. They're like 2 minutes and 20 seconds each. They segue one into the other on the album. And I thought that I would create a kind of a bit of a commentary on what we as artists and also as music fans and just as regular humans in this society, what our existence is like right now. So I dressed up as several different characters. One of them is like this really nerdy accountant. One of them is like this real super hipster douchebaggy kind of guy. One of them is a gender fluid keyboard player. One of them is it's just me. And then I got some other people to be in the video as well. Drummers Gene Holden and Kyle Hughes, guitarist Mike Keneally and Rick Salm. And the concept is going to be that, all these characters and everybody does their stuff on a screen. Meanwhile, people are commenting on Facebook or whatever social media platform they're using as they see it. Then at some point in the video, these characters are going to have to go back to their laptops and read the comments that people left for them, which of course, we know how human beings are in those kinds of environments. So meanwhile, of course, we're watching it on a social media platform almost certainly. So there's a kind of a being John Malkovich aspect to it, where you're watching somebody watching somebody watching somebody. And then about halfway through the video, the whole plot takes a very, very hard right turn. I don't want to spoil it.
Oh yeah. Any details on
I
how
just said I don't want to spoil it.
Okay. All right. Well, very interesting.
So yeah, and there's another character. It's kind of like an 80s rocker character. He figures into the climax of the story. But I wanted to say something about it, but I just didn't want to. Not that there's anything wrong with this, but a lot of the play-along videos that we saw in March and April, the ones that came out right away, people were trying to just do something, contribute something. I think that's really cool. But I felt like the format was just, you know, after a while, it was just obviously we're all sitting here wanting more, you know.
Sure.
And also we were all just getting used to the idea that we were all isolated and, you know, so much screen time. So I figured I would just sit back and kind of like, again, gather and reflect about what was going on around me, and then try and put it into some kind of artistic statement. I'm not sure that this video is an artistic statement or not, but that's what I'm doing.
Now, was it something where Mike and Rick and everybody kind of came and did it all in person, or was it more of a remote thing?
Remotely. And Rick and Mike were on the original tracks, which is what I call them. Same with Gene Hogan, the great metal drummer.
Sure, yeah. Death Clock.
Yep, Death Clock.
The atomic clock.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, very cool. Well, cool. It's cool to catch up with you. You know, I've been a fan since the '90s, I guess. You know, I first heard your name when I turned boil that dust speck over, and it's like, what is this Bryan Beller guy? And yeah, you know, and then, you know, checking you out with the Aristocrats, it's been awesome seeing, you know, when you come down to Atlanta, it's always fun to check out the show. And then most recently, I guess I saw you with Satriani when you guys were at Symphony Hall. Gosh, I don't know, about 3 years ago now, something like that. So yeah, it's great to catch up with you. And I'm excited to talk about the new album. I really like what I've heard so far, and I think it's a really unique approach. You know, it's like you play with some of the greatest guitar players on the planet, you know, and they're all on this record together. You know, I think that's so cool. So
well, you know, of course it probably reads like that, like, oh wow, look at all these names. But the truth is, you know, again, just I think your artistry is inevitably a reflection of the environment that you're currently in or have been in recently. And so when I was writing material and kind of coming up with parts and being inspired by sounds and vibes, inevitably it had to kind of go back to the people that I was playing with at the time. And it just so happened that I was doing a lot of touring with Joe Satriani, and John Petrucci was there on the G3 tour. Of course, I've known Mike Keneally for a long time. And Guthrie, I played with in the Aristocrats. And then, you know, some of the other players on the album, Mike Dawes, the guitarist, I'd seen him play live when I sat in with the Nick Johnston show in LA, which is about a year before I started doing demos. And Gene Hogan, I played with the Death Clock for years, obviously. Joe Travers, I played with for 20 years.
sure.
And so, you know, this whole circle of people were just the people that I know. They're just the people that I was playing with. I know that sounds weird, but like, it's just my version of like hey, these guys in the neighborhood, when we get together and jam, this is like, you know, these are the guys.
Sure. Yeah.
And women too, by the way. Also, Janet Federer, an amazing guitarist and composer who really inspired a lot of the sonic conception of the album with her album from 2015 called This Close. And Neely Brosh, amazing instrumental, you know, modern rock guitarist. You know, there's a song called World Class where it's Ray Hearn from Haken and John Petrucci and a sitar player and her, and it's really complicated. There's a lot of technique involved. She sounds great on that stuff. So
yeah. I heard that.
I immersed in when it was going on.
You got a great variety going on here, just musically and otherwise. And I was curious, did you write these kind of with somebody in mind? Like, I know Mike's good at this, I'm going to write something that would kind of be up his alley, or was it kind of the other way around where the song was already done and then you're like, oh, maybe Mike would be good for this?
It's, you know, it's kind of hard to figure where the chicken and the egg come in, that kind of thing. Like a song like Volunteer State, which is like the second track on the album of 18. Really, the first song is an overture, so it's the real first song.
Right.
When I was writing it, I didn't realize I was writing a Joe Satriani song. But when I got done with the demo and I listened back to it, I was just like, oh, well, I guess I have to call Joe Satriani to play on this because it sounds like something that he would do. And this happens to us as artists and songwriters, you know? It's like, I think at a certain level, we're afraid that when you write something, you hear it, you go, oh my God, it sounds just like this other thing. And the truth is, only we think that as the composer, unless you just absolutely straight up ripped it off.
Sure.
By the time it goes through your own filter, it's going to sound like something different. It might sound like a combination of something Joe would do, and it's like a combination of something I would do, and a couple of other things that I haven't even figured out yet, but maybe a couple years later I'll listen and go, oh, right, it was that song that I used to like back when I was in high school or something. That happens. So sometimes it was like that. You know, like the Storm and Steiner and Ellipses, those metal tunes, I knew I was writing for Gene Hogan. I demoed the drums. Programming was done for Gene Hogan. Right? So that happened. But also, there are pieces where, you know, like Always Worth It, which is this big kind of soundscapey, long, sprawling, progressive thing. I didn't really know who was going to play drums on it. I didn't really know who was going to play guitar until I had the demo complete. And I realized, well, this really kind of dreamy, rich, tonal guitar melody. I know a guitarist named Griffin Peters will be perfect for that.
Yeah, he's on the Bacon at the Potato DVD with
Exactly,
you guys,
exactly.
right?
And,
Yeah.
and the single note comping really kind of funky, clean, really thing. Rick Masson just kills on that stuff. I want to have a drummer who's got a different sound, but who understands, you know, that different sound than Joe Travers and Gene Hogan, but who understands progressive forms. And that's where I started looking at modern progressive bands, and I found Ray Hearn from Haken, who's, you know, I mean, Haken's a big band.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I just wanted to have a different energy and a different sound for a couple of the songs in the album. So it's a mix. Sometimes I was writing directly for somebody like The Flood. There's an ambient piece on the album, just piano and really, really unique sounding acoustic baritone guitars, which are prepared in unique ways. That's what Janet Feder does. I wrote that song that was designed to be a duet between myself and Janet.
Tell us a bit more about Janet. I'm not familiar with her.
Oh, okay. Well, Janet Feder is she's classically trained. You know, her main technique is acoustic classical fingerstyle guitar, but she just took the whole thing and just bent it. Back in the 90s, she started making albums where she prepared the guitar. You've heard of prepared piano, where people
where they put like clips on the strings and or you know that kind of stuff, so they rattle and make weird overtones.
Yeah, she's always been, you know, into exploration and experimentation with the instrument. That's the music that she's interested in listening to. You know, she was into the whole John Zorn, you know, scene in New York and all that stuff. But she listened to a lot of different experimental music, including a lot of traditional classical music. And she came up with this idea of taking the guitar and like putting roach clips on the strings and detuning and putting a split ring from a key on a certain string and making and tuning really strangely and making the guitar do completely unusual sounds. But that's just the beginning of her kind of soundscape world. It sits in a space somewhere between Bill Frisell and Nine Inch Nails.
Okay.
Really, really cool.
That's a cool combo.
And so, yeah, and I was a fan of her work going back to the late 90s and the early aughts. She had a record called Speak Puppet, which I really, really liked, and then a record called Songs with Words, which came after that. There's a duet of her with Fred Frith called Ironic Universe. It's another album. But the album 2015 called This Close, that was the one that, like, she kind of put it all together. And that record just floored me. It was recorded in this Sonoma, I can't remember what it's called, Sonoma sound system. It's pure DSD. It's a format that you don't even see anymore, but it's just an absolutely brilliant sounding album. And you actually leave a little bit disturbed by it. But there's so much space. It's not like, my record's much more dense than. So anyway, I was fascinated by her, and I always wanted to. I did play a concert with her once. We did it, you know, we presented our work on the same stage. And I sat in at her couple of shows, but I always wanted to do something with her in mind. And so I went to Denver, and I recorded her in her studio with her engineer, a place called Mighty Fine Studios. And there was 100-year-old upright piano in there.
Oh, wow.
Like the kind with the really rusty kind of pulleys and levers, and you could just hear it every single time you stepped on the damper pedal, just go, and make all these strange noises. And it was just that kind of Nine Inch Nails-y old piano sound, you know, that I was looking for. And there it was, just sitting in the studio. I couldn't believe it. And so we put together that track bit by bit. It's got several movements, and you know, I don't want to give away all her trade secrets, but she broke out all her whole box of toys and did a bunch of different,
like a tackle box kind of thing.
Yes, it was a tackle box. And you never even imagine what the sounds that you're hearing on the Flood, the song Flood. You'd never imagine what was actually generating the sounds. It's just crazy.
Oh,
and I think what she does is really beautiful, and it was a big contributing factor to the way that I wanted the record to feel, even though I wasn't writing spacious. I want to say ambient. That makes it sound ambient, but it's not. you know, solo acoustic baritone guitar stuff and some textures in the background. You know, my stuff was generally a lot more arranged and dense than that. But there was a key vibe inspiration that came from that album. Again, it's called This Close for people who listen to. I highly recommend you go check it out on Bandcamp. Janet Federer is spelled Feder.
All right, do it, folks. Check it out, Bandcamp. Well, cool. I was wondering if we could talk about a few of the different songs and a little bit about their inspirations and stuff. The tune you did with Mike Keneally, tell us a bit about that one. It has an interesting title, Steiner and Ellipsis.
Steiner and Ellipsis. Most of the titles in the album are double entendre. And I've kind of made a little oath to myself that I wasn't just going to tell anybody what it was. The answer is kind of just hiding in plain sight. It's an onomatopoeia. So for people who just want to, you know, take it a step further and look at the logo on the album, and it's all just sitting there.
Okay, so it's kind of a mystery to solve.
Yeah. Okay. So the song is a really aggressive, heavy, like almost throwbacky '80s thrash metal song. It's really fast, really aggressive, and it, you know, the album Scenes from the Flood is designed in 4 parts to be 4 final sides of a double album, and this is the end of side 1. So, you know, we have a few themes that are introduced, a couple of characters that are introduced, and this is one of the last characters to get introduced. This is this very powerful, potentially malevolent force in the story, and that's what this song represents. And if you listen closely, you can hear an echo of the melody from the very beginning of the album, which is one of the first tiebacks that you hear. But the fast riffing, you know, there are a lot of great metal guitarists out there. If I really wanted it to sound like a traditional metal song, I could have got somebody who does that. There's the really tight, like, but I didn't want that. I wanted it to sound more like the kind of more dangerous sounding stuff from the 80s and early 90s, where, you know, when the guitars were riffing fast, it almost sounded like tremolo picking. Instead of going, it sounded like
almost surfing.
You know, really, really dangerous. And the way that Mike Keneally plays metal is not like a metal player. He plays it like a rock player, and it sounds dangerous. And I heard him do that with Deathclaw. He doesn't approach the strings the way that a metal guitarist would approach the strings. And so from a mental standpoint and also from a sonic standpoint, I thought it'll be really great to have Mike Keneally do all the rhythm guitars, because the rhythm guitars are really, really difficult on this song. The riff is really hard. There's some strange time signatures, and then there's some stuff that's just really hauling ass. So I thought it would be fun to have the Death Clock backing band get back together too to do an unusual track, and that's what it ended up being. Me and Mike Keneally and Gene Hogan.
It's awesome. Yeah, I remember seeing you guys at a place here called the Tabernacle. Gosh, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years ago now, and it was a great show. You have the cartoons running and everything in the background, and it's
super fun.
Yeah, it was great. Very cool. So tell us a little bit more about the concept behind the album, because you said there's some characters. You know, what inspired the title and, you know, the concept behind it?
Well, Scenes from the Flood, the whole concept is, I mean, basically this is telling the story of an individual who walks into the story with a good deal of optimism and a certain perspective and a view on life and the way that it works, which is informed by, I'll say hopeful, but, you know, a certain range of possibility and forward looking about where they stand in the world and where the world is around them. And little by little, throughout the course of the record, this worldview is essentially attacked. And the focus of the record is really setting all the pieces in motion. You know, certain stories which are reflected by certain melodic motifs that keep happening. And the song titles give a little bit of clue what's going on. And the lyrics, which are sparing, but the spoken word in the third song, everything you know, gives you a little bit of clue.
Is that you?
That is me.
That's
the initial outlook of the album. And then halfway through part 2 of 4, the storm comes. And the storm represents an event, a cataclysmic kind of catastrophic life event, which really causes you to just have to stop and rethink everything. And we've all gone through something like that. So nobody walks through life unscathed, right?
Yeah, well, it's that kind of year,
Yeah, oh yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah.
So because I was writing this in 2016, 17. And then once that happens, your outlook is shifted. And you have to, so the individual part of the story is that they're kind of struggling, trying to find their way back to this initial optimism. But life just kind of keeps pinballing them around. And by the end of the album, there's a series of kind of like very dramatic endings near the end of the album, the end of Acts and Exits, the end of World Class, and then finally at the end of Sweetwater, where it's heavier and heavier and more dramatic until finally it seems like, you're going to get home. Yeah, everything's, but by the time you get back to Sweetwater, there's this very major tonality going on. It sounds like, wow, we took 88 minutes and we're finally running the corner. We're going to make it back. And then at the very end, the album takes a turn that you probably wouldn't expect. So the story and scenes from the flood, literally, I imagine that every song was a certain landscape, a certain scene, a certain visual. And the flood represents the damage that the storm does, because that's what a flood is.
Right.
So, just some light fare for your Sunday afternoon. I mean, but this is what was bubbling in my head, and it took me a long time to figure out where to go after Thanks in Advance, after a very kind of optimistic 2008 solo, my last solo album release that I had done. And this had been working up in my head, this concept, for a long time. And it just took many years for it to come together. But once it did, I had a list of song titles, and I had a list of song meanings, and I had a list of forms, I had a text file, I had a bunch of voice memos. Every time I came up with anything, I would sing in my iPhone voice memo right away. Songwriters always sing into your voice memo right away when you use it. Exactly. And by the end of 2016, I had the whole album almost completely mapped out. And it was just a matter of making the demos and then going into the studio and recording for real, mechanically putting the thing together. But, by the end of 2016, I knew all the song titles, what it really was, how the album was going to go. By the end of 2017, I had a complete demo album, the whole thing. The demo album is remarkably, it really, if you listen to the demo album straight down, you're like, well, there it is. Of course, the real album is better, but the elements of the demo album, it's all there. It's all fairly planned.
Just kind of pre-guest stars, pretty much. It was
exactly.
Sketched out in advance.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all programmed drums, all my guitar playing there. But I did keep some of it. That's the weird thing is that by the second half of the album, I started to get a little bit okay at guitar and better at the recording of the guitar. And so there's a stretch on side 3 of the vinyl, tracks 10, 11, and 12, which is songs Bunkistan and As Advertised and Army of the Black Rectangles, where all the demo guitars, we kept them. We just reamped them. And they ended up being the real guitars on the album, including 2 solos. So no one was more surprised than me about that, but it was my engineer and partner, Forrester Saville, who suggested it. He was like, you sure you want to redo these? And I was like, convinced me that I shouldn't.
Right.
And then he took them and he mixed them and reamped them for real. And I listened. I was like, okay. But don't ask me to play that stuff.
Again. Okay. And where did you record the proper album at?
Well, the drums were done in a few different nice rooms. The Gene Hogan was recorded at United, which is the old Ocean Way, Los Angeles.
Oh, nice.
Recorded in the room where Thriller was recorded.
Oh, nice, man.
Also, like a ton of, every hit record from the 60s, 70s, 80s, it was ridiculous looking at the albums on the wall. Everything going back to the Beach Boys was nuts.
If those walls could talk.
Yeah.
If those walls could sing.
No Drivers I recorded at NRG in the Valley in LA, and a lot of like Rage Against the Machine, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Audio Slave, a lot of a lot of my favorite rock bands had recorded there. It's a big rock room that sounds great. Ray Hearn recorded at the Crypt in London, which is a nice studio there. And then, the guitars, they were mostly done remotely. I did my guitars here, I had Rick Masal come over a couple times. I went to San Diego to record Mike Keneally. I went to Denver to record Jen and Federer. Other than that, everybody was remote. Joe Satriani did his at home in San Francisco. John Petrucci did his while they were making Distance Over Time.
Yeah, his new solo record. Yeah.
At Yonder Barn. No, the last Dream Theater album. Actually.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
They were up at that Yonder Barn place, and he had his sound up, and he said it to me. He was like, "You're getting the real thing. This is my Dream Theater album sound." I'm like, "Okay, thank you."
While we're at it, let's slip this in there.
Yeah, I know.
It's awesome.
And yeah, everybody. I mean, Neely Brosh recorded herself at home. Darren Charles and Jake Hasselmo recorded themselves at their home studios. Jamie Kime I recorded here at my place. Yeah, I mean, you don't really need these days to go into a studio and get a guitar. You can, and you'll get more air around it, and everything will be cool. You'll get a sound that you wouldn't have, but you don't need it, and it's very expensive, to get those rooms these days. So, I mean, but the drums are really important. So, if you're gonna do an album, you really want it to sound.
Yeah, you gotta have a bitchin' drum sound.
Because it's the way the drums sound affect the way everything else sounds more than any other instrument affects the way other instruments sound. The way the room of the drums sound, the way the overheads of the drums sound, the miking scheme, there's just so much dynamic range going on. It just affects everything. The wrong drum sound will make guitars sound better.
Now, I'm guessing you gave them quite a bit of leeway when it came to drum parts versus what you had on your drum machine demo version, or no?
Sometimes, I mean, listen, the song will always tell you what to do.
Right.
A lot of times, metal songs have patterns. It just is what it is. But that doesn't mean that Gene didn't Geneify it, put his special bell cymbals in there, a couple different kick patterns that he really likes. But the essence of the groove and the metal patterns were really there on the demo. Especially the Storm, that's very planned out. Steiner and Ellipses was more of a go for it. For something like World Class, I mean, Ray Hearn played the part, but he changed it a little bit. And always worth it is just a straight ahead groove. Something like Volunteer State, where it's just a straight rock groove. I mean, like, the difference between the programming and the person playing it, it's just in the feel. A groove is a groove when it comes to that kind of thing. Put the accents where they belong and you just play it. So I am a believer in, I think that the more complete your demo is, the better chance you're going to have of realizing the vision that you have for the song.
Sure.
You also are bringing in the people that are playing on your song for a reason. And so you got to balance those two things. But I'm a big believer that the thing that matters more than what the part is, although of course that counts, is the way that the player sounds. When you bring in a certain player, especially a drummer, they're going to sound a certain way. They hit the drum a certain way, they tune the drums a certain way. It changes the way everything sounds.
Sure.
So you're really bringing in a world of sound and feel more than you are bringing in, I want this guy to hit the and of 4 on this thing.
All right.
If that's got to be there, that's got to be there. If that's a fill, it can be something else. But the sound is there either way. So it's the sound that counts.
So where's the best place to get the album at?
I'm so glad you asked. It's BryanBeller.com. If you just go there, BryanBeller, there's a shop button. And it'll bring you to a page which has links to physical media from both the US store, a USA store, and also a UK and EU store. Because I have warehouses in both places.
Okay.
If you're interested in digital, then there's a link to Bandcamp, that's where you get the high-res digital download audio, which you can get WAV, FLAC, anything you want.
Okay. Well, look it up, folks. Question, is Onion Boy Records, that still your label? Or is that? It is. And is this is on it as well, I would imagine.
It is.
All your solo releases. How about your your back catalog? Are those all available at your site as well? Thanks in advance. And
Thanks in Advance came out in 2008, and View came out in 2000.
View, that's right. Yeah, I love that tune, 7% Grade.
Oh, thank you.
Such a catchy tune. Yeah, man. Well, I love the whole album, actually. I remember you guys did that. You did that tour where Mike did a set and you did a set, and it was the same band, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. Was there a live album that came out of that?
Well, there were 2 live albums that came out of that. We did a short 5-date East Coast tour. we recorded a show there, but it wasn't our favorite show. That happens sometimes.
Sure.
Then a couple months later, we did a 9-show West Coast tour. And we felt like we were just, tours are funny. Sometimes it's not until the 10th show that you really understand what the show is.
Oh, yeah.
The show has a pacing and a flavor, has to do with the set list and sequence. And so we didn't record any of those shows, but after that we were like, well, why don't we just play the Baked Potato as this act to the same 5 guys, me, Rick Solomon, Griff Peters, Joe Travers, Mike Keneally. And so we recorded that show, and that one we liked. So my set became Wednesday Night Live, and Mike's set became Bacon and Potato.
Okay, well, very cool. Well, that was a great DVD. Is there a DVD of your set up as part of that as well?
Unfortunately, I think there's maybe 2 left in my web store, and then it's going up.
That's it, huh?
I just can't justify
running it again. All right.
Yeah. So if you want it, now's the time to get it.
2 lucky people out there watching this, go get it now. Yeah. Well, cool. I'm curious, do you feel like there's a thread that kind of runs through all of your solo material that kind of ties them together in any way?
If there is one, I think it's that in the end, I'm a progressively minded artist. And when I say progressively minded, I think that means that I want all of my albums to feel like a world that you're stepping into. And I want them to feel like there's a concept to them. Even if the first 2 aren't like concept albums, like Scenes from the Flood is. Those are the kinds of albums that always moved me. Albums that had a vibe and a concept to them. Maybe with some repeating themes and stuff. So even if I was doing more jazz fusion stuff, it's hard to know exactly how to classify some of the stuff that I've done. I think that ideally I would like it to feel like you listen to a Pink Floyd album, even if it didn't sound like Pink Floyd. Because Pink Floyd, I think, is just, especially their golden age of like metal, dark side, Wish You Were Here, Animals on the Wall, did a better job of creating a world in their album sonics and vibe that you could walk into than probably any other band. So, I'm shooting high there, but high standards.
I think you're in the ballpark, because it just seems like these albums just kind of immerse yourself in them and let them wash over you. And, there's a lot of variety. It kind of reminds me of some of the things Mike's done, a lot of his albums, not any one thing, but by the time you're done, you feel like you've gone on a trip and visited a lot of interesting places that somehow relate to each other. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
I feel like Scenes from the Flood was the first time, I had to live a little, I think, in order to finally put together the record that I'd always wanted to make, even before I even knew I wanted to make a record. And then while I was making the record, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. And then when I thought I knew what I wanted to do, it didn't quite do it the way I wanted to. Finally, at my late 40s, I somehow put it all together. It took a lot of time. That's the key for me, anyway. It took a lot of time and did not rush it. Got every little detail with it.
How long has it been out now?
Well, its 1-year birthday was September 13th. So
already.
It just had its 1 year. It's just a little over 1 year since release.
Very cool. All right. Well, if y'all haven't checked it out, you know where to go. Okay, I got some other questions here. We got a couple in the chat room here. Let me take a peek here and see if anybody's got something. My friend Scott says, Bryan, how long at the Berkeley SOM? SOM?
School of Music.
School of Music, yeah, there you go, yeah.
4 years.
4 years?
1989 to 1992.
Okay. And my friend Chris says, I've always wondered how Bryan and Mike came to work with Kevin Gilbert. Any memories?
I didn't know Kevin Gilbert. That was a Mike relationship. And I don't know how Mike met Kevin. So, unfortunately, I don't really know the answer to that question. But I did work with Kevin on that Tales from Yesterday tribute track. The Tales from Yesterday is a Yes tribute album that came out in '95 or something.
Yeah, it's
recorded Siberian Katru. It was me, Kevin on keyboards, Mike Keneally on guitar, and Nick DiVirgilio on drums, and Kevin was already a very accomplished producer, and he was only in his late 20s. It's the only time I ever worked with him, and it's the only time I ever met him. I'm a big fan of his, and Shaming of the True is a great album. Thud is a great album. Shadow Self is a masterpiece of a song.
Yeah.
So.
You know, we actually had a Kevin Memories show a couple weeks ago. It's on my web. It's on YouTube, and where we chatted with Mark Bonilla and Stan Cody from Giraffe and Dave Kersner, and it's a good listen for Kevin fans, definitely. So how did you come to work with Mike? Was he like the first kind of recording that you did in a major way?
Well, it was because of Dweezil Zappa.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Z.
Yeah. I met Joe Travers, the short version. I've told the story many times. I've met Joe Travers at Berklee College of Music. Joe Travers was a big Zappa aficionado.
Oh, yeah. The master as well. Yeah.
And he got the gig with Dweezil Zappa. Mike Keneally was already in the band. Mike Keneally had been in Frank Zappa's 19 touring with him on the last one. And then a few months later, I got an audition to join Dweezil's band, and then I joined Dweezil's band. And then there was Mike Keneally, who was on my side of the stage, and I learned about his solo material, and I really fell in love with it. And that was Hat was released at that time, but Boil That Dust Back was under construction. And Mike asked me to do some recordings for Boil That Dust Back, which was a 1994 release, I believe. And it was one of the very first professional recordings I ever did. I recorded some stuff for Dweezil before that. That's really my first one.
Okay. And you were using that Tobias bass back then that you just got back, am I right?
That's right. Guess what? It's right here.
Cool. Show us. Yeah.
Ta-da!
Wow, man. It's like
I got this thing back.
Like, hey, old girl, where you been?
People who have the Mike Keneally Boil That Dust Back Deluxe package that came out a few years ago, which had some VHS footage of us recording the album, you saw this thing.
And that's the one.
If you saw the 1993 Z, which is the Dweezil and Zappa band that Mike and Joe and Travis and Floyd, the Chaos Tour, which is a March 1994 tour with about maybe 15 shows in the U.S. That's it. You saw this instrument. If you saw my senior recital at Berklee College of Music in 1992, you saw this instrument. But that was about it for public. But this is the instrument that I got to LA on, and then it was stolen out of my apartment on December 31, New Year's Eve Day, 1994.
94. Wow. So it's been gone a long time. It looks like whoever had it took darn good care of it.
Yeah, it is. He says it sat in a closet for 20 years.
Wow.
Anyway.
Bought it unbeknownst to them that it was stolen?
But the bottom line is he came forward, and when he saw I had posted on a forum called talkbass.com with a picture of this bass and right in the headline said the serial number and type of bass it was, he says that he looked it up and he saw that I was the owner. So he emailed me. We worked something out, and now I got it back 26 years later.
That is wild.
Crazy. So, it was an unexpected bright spot in otherwise grim year.
Yeah, no doubt. Were there any big Tobias users that inspired you? I think probably the first guy I ever saw play one was Chris Squire back on Big Generator, 87.
That's right, with the Drop A. I remember the cover of Bass Player Magazine.
Yeah, the red one, yeah.
Yeah, the red one is funny because Mike really didn't make many colored basses. Most of them were wood. I can't remember. That wasn't it, though. That wasn't why I got into Tobias, although I remember that Chris did have one.
Yeah.
I had an Alembic, so I was already into like the coffee table bass type kind of thing. I honestly can't remember why I got into that. I think I was reading about it. I talked to somebody about it, and then I flew to LA to check it out. The guy who had it, I listened to it. It sounded great, and I bought it. It's terrible, but at the advanced age at which I find myself these days, I cannot remember certain things about like what I was doing when I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
It's not because I was up all night drunk either. I just can't remember the sequence of events that led to me getting it. I remember going to LA and getting it, but I don't remember how I first heard of Tobias. It's weird.
Another thing, You know, it seems like you've been an internet savvy guy since the '90s. Am I right? I remember reading
Well,
your blog back, you know, in 19 something, 1990 something.
I got online in 1995, which was pretty early. I had a web journal. That's what we called it
Oh
back
yeah,
then.
yeah.
The Gen X early adopters, uh, before there were blogs, before there were web logs, there were web journals, and I had one on my Keneally site. As a part of mykeneally.com, I had something called the web, and then I got my own company shortly thereafter. So I think the Mike Keneally website debuted in 1994, which is very early.
Wow, yeah, that's way
And mine went live in 1995, which is still pretty early.
yeah,
And
no doubt.
yeah, I mean, I was putting out content. Of course, this was way before social media, and you know, it was hard to grasp the concept that you could just put something up there. Somebody in Finland could send you an email saying that they read it, like 10 minutes later. It was just,
Right.
and it was, I don't, it definitely gave you a kick, gave you a rush. Uh, Little did I know that, 15 years later, there would be a company designed around the idea that that rush would be addictive.
Yeah, yeah, man.
And you can fill in the blanks from there. But back then, it seemed like an extraordinarily futuristic and positive development in usage.
Yeah, along with that crackling modem, you know.
Oh yeah,
Back in the day, you know, it's like,
I was up at 56K, not 28.
oh wow, yeah, you're uptown. Pretty cool. Well, yeah, I remember reading your blog for a long time, and I remember when 9/11 happened. I remember you were just like, you know, whatever I'm talking about on here is trivial compared to what's happened today, so I'm not going to bother doing it for a while. Did you ever get back to it?
Uh, well,
Am I remembering that right?
God, thinking about the way that me and plenty of other people probably reacted to 9/11 with the benefit of almost 20 years of hindsight. I don't want to make this about politics. It's whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
Subject. But, uh, you know, uh, our reaction to that event was the fulcrum of just about everything that we experience now. I think there's historians will one day look back at that and say, wow, it was kind of before that, it was after that. It's a lot of emotion.
It's definitely a dividing.
Like choose your own adventure book from there. But I've written plenty since then. Maybe I didn't write about things for a while, but I started writing about stuff again. I've written, long form blogs. There was this very, very long form thing that I wrote in 2005 when I got a job and went back to being a musician. There was a very long form thing that I wrote about. I had another burglary in 2016 where most of my instruments were stolen out of storage space. And then on social media, I continually write content, and I write it in long form. Facebook is just, where do you begin? It's the best platform where everybody is. I got to go where the people are.
Right.
As an artist who needs to communicate with people who you hope will take a look at your art. And so that's where I write most of the stuff that would have been on a blog in previous years. So I still write. And I don't think I really stuck to that. Oh, I'm not going to write now.
Well, initially, I'm sure many people felt the same way. It's just like, so.
Well, my family's a New York family, and my father worked in the World Trade Center, and my brother lives 20 blocks from me, and that place was a real place for us.
So, all right. How much time do we have left? I've got some more questions about some different stuff, but
about 15 minutes. Is that cool?
Sure, that sounds good. So a lot of us, I think, probably saw you playing with Mike first, before the Aristocrats, and I was just curious, what are some of your favorite albums that Mike's done that you played on? Do you have any personal favorites?
Well, God,
I know they're all awesome, but
choose your children. I'm really, really I really, really like the work I did in Dog. That was looking back on the catalog. You know, that was. I feel like I was fully realized as a bassist inside that material. A lot of different sounds, vibes, grooves. I just that one, as a player, recorded it. I feel like I really got across what I was trying to do as a bassist and a musician inside Mike's stuff. I mean, you know, because you can look at the others like, well, that Dust Spec, I was very, very young, and there's a special energy to that. Sluggo, I didn't feel like I had my sound together.
Was that back when you were using the Fender?
Yeah, that was not the greatest recording bass in the world, that Fender Active Jazz Deluxe 5. And then, you know, Half Live in Hollywood was a great live document. Again, sound, you know, I didn't really have like work together. Then there's Dancing, which is which is an awesome album. There's a lot of great compositions on there, and I actually played an MTV bass on there, but there's a couple things I would have done differently in retrospect. And then in Dog, when we got to Dog, which was the next rock album, you know, after Wood and Smoke and Universal Provide and all the other stuff that he did, that I felt like I had the bass, I had the red Michael bass, and I had my single chain worked out. I really, really got the point across. So that's probably the one that I would choose.
Okay.
Although I would also say that the song Life's Too Small on Scambot 1 has
awesome.
Just so much of everything that I ever wanted to do inside of my Keneally composition. It's such a wonderful composition. So it's like the kind of thing that only Mike could write. Sure. So to me, I've long been a champion of that song as like the signature composition of this big work.
The version on the Bacon at the Potato DVD is smoking. So cool.
Really amazing. And trying to play what we call the consciousness melody. You know, there's 3 movements in that song. 4, excuse me, there's 4 movements. First one is the that kind of light skippy beat. And then the second movement is this kind of brooding, long 6/8 or guitar arpeggio and then a guitar solo, Rick's instrumental section. Then the third passage is this. It sounds like this is the consciousness melody. It sounds like a sound collage, but it's not. It's just an open drum part with pulse but no time signature, and then 2 different counterpunctual melodies, one on high keyboard and one on guitar.
Yeah.
And then me and Mike Keneally and I, in unison, have to play this through composed, never repeating melody that goes on for about 45 seconds over top of this completely chaotic world. And I remember when I learned it on the album, it was just like, how is that going to work live? It's just, you know, it feels like I'm the only one who's doing something that can be anchored. The rest of it is floating in space. But when we all got together and played it live, Mike orchestrated it. He said, do this here, you do this here. And little by little, it came together. And when we got it right live, which we did that day, it was really a thing of beauty.
Yeah, that's something to behold, definitely, man. Great tune. So the Aristocrats, if you could tell us a little bit about how you hooked up with Marco and Guthrie, that would be interesting. And tell us a little bit about the 4 albums.
Marco, I met through Mike Keneally. That was in 2005, right? Of course. Mike Keneally somehow found out about Marco through a bassist named Jan Westman, a Finnish guy who was a great solo album called None for the Money, Two for the Show. Is that what it's called? God, I don't want to butcher the name of the album.
Jan Westman.
Everybody needs to hear this album. Oh, come on, where is it? I don't have it in here. I just got to open up Spotify and find it. Just give me 1 second because it's totally worth doing. I don't know if you can see me right now. Hang on. Here we go. None for the Money, Two for the Show. I was right. None for the Money, Two for the Show by Jan Westman. Jan is J-A-A-N. Westman is W-E-S-S-M-A-N-N.
Okay.
What a great album. just anyone who's listening to your show who's into the music that we're talking about is going to love this album. That's all I'm going to say about it. Just go check it out right now. He somehow knew Marco. I don't even know how, but recommended Marco to Keneally, and then we did a pickup gig with him in Europe. We only rehearsed once, and Marco just like destroyed, like absolutely killed on all of the hardest Mike Keneally material. Who's this guy? I never heard of him. He's like the greatest drummer ever. So we did that work with Keneally. Then there was some work with KMB, a project that was Mike Keneally, Marco, and me, where we were all doing our own stuff. But it was too eclectic a mix, I think, in order for it to make any sense. It was just a lot going on compositionally. We did a couple of gigs, and then Marco played on my solo album, a song called Love, Terror, Adrenaline from Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I played on his instructional DVD, which is called The Marco Show. And we were doing little things here and there. We did this gig in Russia, me, Marco, and Greg Koch. And then what happened was that was in 2010. And then in 2011, I got invited to do the Anaheim Bass Bash. And they asked me to bring a band. And the year before, I had brought my 5-piece band, which was, the Mike Keneally, Rick Peters, Rick Masson, Joe Travers. I didn't want to do that again. And I thought, well, we just did this band. This me and Marco and Greg Howe. Let's just do that. We're ready to go. And we booked it, and then Greg had to bail out about a month before. And we were going to cancel the gig, and I was just like, man, I wonder if there's anybody else who can replace him. It turns out that there was this guy on Facebook named Colin Green. He always gets on my case when I don't say who he was, who was messaging me over and over again saying, you have got to check out this guy, Guthrie. And I clicked on the video, and I was just like,
right.
And again, it was just like, how do I not know who this person is? It made a little more sense that I didn't know who Guthrie was, because Guthrie didn't have a website, he wasn't on social media, he didn't do any marketing, he was a real, underground guy.
I think I remember hearing about him playing with Asia. That's the first time he was ever on my radar. And I thought, gosh, he's a little overqualified for that gig. But,
yeah. Well, hey, British Prog guys. Anyway, I don't want to make this a super long story, but me and Marco and Guthrie ended up doing that show at NAMM in 2011, and it really seems to have hit a nerve. People really dug it, and then we decided, well, let's try and be a band and make an album and see what happens. And here we are, 4 albums and 9 years later. First album, The Aristocrats, was done very quickly and very raw. And, we recorded the whole thing in 7 days and mixed it in 2. Classic first album story, right?
Sure.
And people really seemed to dig it. And so then little by little, we started touring more and more. And then the second album was called Culture Clash. That was 2013. Still a pretty raw album, but a little bit more polished, and we took a little more time with it. Then 2015, we recorded in LA at Sunset Sound. That's called Tres Caballeros.
Yeah.
We allowed ourselves a little bit more room in the studio to do more stuff. And then finally, in 2019, we recorded an album called You Know What. And, we, Marco in particular, really allowed himself to just kind of turn it into a studio production album, his songs, because we each contribute 3 songs per album.
Right.
And on some of Guthrie's stuff, we layered it too. I tried to keep my stuff very trio oriented because I had just done this massive, orchestrated, big arrangement album, Scenes from the Flood. And so I was kind of excited to get back to just trio it. Right. So my stuff on the album was pretty raw. But, it was the most polished album that we've done by far.
Okay, of the 4, I thought Tres Caballeros was pretty close. It seemed like you guys kind of turned a corner when it came to that one.
Yeah, we definitely
the most diverse one yet at that point.
That's for sure. Culture Clash was kind of like us making the first album again, just the way that it should have been. That isn't the way that I've ever put it before, but in retrospect, it seems like that's the way that it was. And then once we got to the third album, it was like, oh, what else can we do?
Well, there's so much variety from your Kentucky meat shower kind of bluegrass, Steve Morse on meth kind of stuff to Western Spanish.
Has that on there too. It's kind of like Steve Ray Vaughan on speed.
And then there's like a tune, one of Guthrie's, that's almost like a Matheny tune or something, really clean.
Oh, Pig's Day Off.
Yeah.
One of the, we always joke about this in the band. We all feel it's like one of the most beautiful compositions we've ever heard. And we would play it live, and people would just kind of be like, I'm not sure that people really got it.
Yeah.
We insisted on playing it anyway because because we felt so strongly that it was such a great song. I don't mean to denigrate fans or anything like that. It's just that when you're on stage, you can tell when the audience is really into something, and when they're just kind of like there for it. And the difference between, like, when we play Flatlands, that's a ballad. Everybody was super into it, and it's such a simple song, you know. I mean, like, there's not much to it. And then Pig's Day Off has this beautiful chordal melodies, this really intricate voice leading, and all this stuff. And we couldn't get the same audience buy-in with it, but we did it every show on the Tres Caballeros tour anyway. I feel like that song really deserves.
I'm glad you did, because I just think it brought, you know, more variety. You know, there's quite a bit anyway, but, you know, I think people come to you guys kind of expecting the more muscular kind of stuff, and then, but, you know, there needs to be moments to stop and breathe between all that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. The Aristocrats are about, you know, loud, rowdy.
That's
busy.
a power trio in the modern sense, you know.
And that's cool. You know, we'll bring plenty of that.
You guys are like Cream 50 years down the road.
Oh, well, that's high praise. But
with all the great evolutions that have come along since then.
Loud, but yeah, you're gonna do a 2-hour show. Every song can't be punching you in the face, or else after a while you just be like, please stop punching me in the face.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely. Okay, well, let's see. I got a couple more questions here. In the chat room, my friend Chris wants to know if there is a pedal that you can't live without.
The Exotic Effects Bass BB Preamp is my main overdrive pedal, and it's my little amp peg in a box secret weapon. And I feel really strongly about that pedal live for main overdrive, and I wouldn't want to live without that. I mean, you know, the Boss OC2, the old brown box, the old octave pedal, often imitated, never duplicated.
Oh, that's the one where you get that sub-octave down kind of thing. Yeah.
There's a lot of pedals out there that do that, but there's a whole cult of bass players around that pedal. Just like,
I'm sure, you know, a guy that uses that a lot is Guy Pratt. You know, he used it on all that Pink Floyd stuff he did in the 80s.
I'm sure that he was using a pedal.
He may not have been. He got down there somehow. I'm not sure what means he used. But
Tim LaFay has really done some amazing stuff with the OC2. Yannick Gwizdala is another guy. There's a bunch of us, and we're all just like, this is the pedal.
I love that sound. That's great. My bass player needs one for Christmas, now that I know what it is.
I'll whisper in Santa's ear for you.
And what's your main basses these days? You got the Tobias back. What else have you been using that's your favorite?
Well, Mike Lowell are the main basses that I play live. I have my old M5. You know, I have a 1998 Modern 5, which is ash body maple in the board. I really love that bass. It's a classic design. I've been using it for 20 years. And then I have another Mike Lowell, a PJ, which is a passive bass alder with a rosewood fingerboard, which is a darker, smoother sound. And then I have a third Mike Lowell, which is it's a signature model called the BBMF5, which is a modern Focus 5, which really kind of emulates some of the stuff that the Spectre EMG world was the sounds that it was producing. This is kind of bass nerd talk now, but Spectre basses have a really, really unique signature kind of compressy, focused mid-range sound with a glassy top end. Mm-hmm. I love Spectres, and I have 2 Spectres, and I use them for recordings, but my hands don't love the way that the whole mechanical geometrical setup works. So when I play live, I like playing the Lowells better. I discovered this over a 5-year period. I really tried to do it. So I use the Spectres for recording, and sometimes the Lowells as well. I use the Lowells pretty much exclusively when I play live.
Is it my imagination, or did just somebody steal one of those from you a few years ago, but you got it back quickly?
I had another, like I mentioned earlier, I had in 2016, and most of my instruments were stolen. All at once, and I only got one of them back, really. But that's a long story. We don't want to go into that now.
Then how about 4-string? Is that just something you use like with Death Clock, or?
Yeah, well, the 4-string. I mean, I play the T bass, which is a Thunderbird. Michael makes a much better playing non-neck diving Thunderbird, and I played that bass on the Death Clock tour. 4-string, but strung C, F, B flat, E flat, which is down a major third.
Oh wow! Okay.
Strings, the low 4 strings of a 5-string set of a 5-string bass. So it's like BEAD tuned up a half step. And but I mean that's for a very specific purpose. That's for C standard death claw.
Sure.
I don't use that bass for anything else really.
Anything else? Yeah.
And I have a P bass, a regular old made in Mexico P bass. That if anyone ever wants to hear P bass, I've got one. You know.
But 5-string is your preference. I mean,
Yeah.
9 times out of 10.
5-string is my preference.
All right, before we hit it, I always ask everybody a few things about their early years as a musician and music lover. I was curious, what's the first album you remember buying with your own money?
I don't remember. I remember the first album that I got as a gift that was my own album.
There you go. That'll work. Oh, you dropped out. One more time?
It was Pink Floyd, The Wall.
Okay, good. Double. Yeah,
It
excellent.
makes a lot of sense. I mean, I really, you know, as arrogant as this sounds, I really wanted every album that I ever wrote to feel like that album. And with Scenes from the Flood, I feel like I finally approached it. Like, you know, I know, again, it's so pretentious and arrogant, but you got to shoot for something.
Sure,
And
yeah.
that's what I was shooting for.
You set the bar high, and yeah, those kind of things just kind of seep into your pores, and come out years later. That's a great thing. How about a couple early concerts you went to that just blew your mind?
Metallica, Master of Puppets, 1986.
There you go. I saw them open for Ozzy, I think.
Good. That was the tour before that.
Okay, there you go.
Right,
So
that was right before. That was in between Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And
So yeah, that was mind blowing to be a part of. You could feel it that they were going to take over the world. Even I couldn't imagine how big they were going to get, but there was maybe 2,000 people there, 1,800. So New York City show at the Felt Forum, which was the mid-sized theater, in the Madison Square Garden complex.
Okay.
And it was, the energy in there was just insane.
Imagine.
I mean, that was an early one. I saw the Yes Big Generator tour, but I wanted to see a lot more of the older stuff, and of course.
Oh, me too. I mean, I started going to see them in '84, but I don't think I really got what I wanted until about 2000 when they did the Masterworks tour, Not that I didn't enjoy those other shows. In hindsight, they were awesome, but,
Yeah, I mean, Yes is a funny band. We can talk forever about them, what else? Judas Priest, Defenders of the Faith. I saw that in 1984.
That was my second concert.
That was my second concert. That's weird.
I like that, man.
Where?
Well, I grew up in Topeka, Kansas. So we drove to Kansas City and saw it in a little place called Bonner Springs, right outside at a place called Sandstone, typical shed. And yeah, that was an amazing show. And then we waited patiently for the follow-up to it, hoping it'd be heavier than ever. And we got Turbo, and we were like, damn you, LA. Look what you did to Judas Priest, Yeah.
Judas Priest is another funny band because no label would ever allow a band that many records to find themselves these days. It wasn't like some of the early stuff was cool. Sin After Sin was cool, but still didn't sound metal. And Stained Class and Hellbent for Leather were cool, but again, they were still kind of finding themselves. And then finally, British Steel, Point of Entry, Screaming for Vengeance, Defenders of the Faith. Those were albums, I think, 6, 7, 8, and 9 in their catalog.
Yeah.
So it's a very of its era kind of story. Yeah. So those are my early shows. I didn't see a whole, and I saw Pink Floyd, on the Momentary Lapse of Reason, without Roger Waters, which was a drag, but it was still Pink Floyd.
That was the most expensive concert I'd gone to at that point.
I saw 20th row, Madison Square Garden, stoned out of my mind.
Got it. Well, I was nosebleed at Chiefs Stadium. My head was bumping the scoreboard.
Oh my God.
So far up there. But $25, and I thought, oh, well, that's a lot of money for a concert. But then you went and saw it, and it's like, talk about bells and whistles, man. We got our $25 worth and then some.
I'll tell you a couple other great shows that I saw. Red Hot Chili Peppers on the Mother's Milk tour.
Oh, nice.
That was 1990 in Boston. Rage Against the Machine on the Evil Empire tour.
Oh.
1994 in LA. And also 9 Inch Nails, Downward Spiral with Marilyn Manson opening up in 1994 at the University. Like that was that was like a Metallica 1986 Master of Puppets moment where I was just in there and I didn't really understand the Nine Inch Nails thing at the time, and I was just looking around like
very cutting edge, you know.
Oh my God, I mean it was a whole other level of intensity, even beyond metal in a way, and it was kind of an accident that I was even there. So that was great. Radiohead, OK Computer Tour. I saw that with Mike Keneally. He dragged me there. So, yeah, some good ones.
I can imagine. That must have been amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool, Bryan. Well, thank you so much for coming on here today and chatting about the new album, Scenes from the Flood. Remind everybody again where they can pick that up at.
It's at bryanbeller.com. Just, BRYANBELLER.com. There's a shop link.
Yeah, that sounds great.
It's all there.
Excellent. All righty. Well, come back again sometime and we'll talk about Yes for an hour.
Sure. At least.
Among others.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks again.
All right. Well, take care and may the smoke blow away from you as much as possible.
Thank you very much. I hope
All right. Y'all take care. All right. We'll see you.